G'day guys, welcome to Unity UI Part 3 on the Unity UI user interface. So as you notice, Part 1 we just went through the top part again, so file, edit, game objects and so on. And second part went up and we went through these sections here, which is your scale, movement tools, and just went through these scenes and games and different view imports and, different ways of looking through the scene and toggles and gizmos and all that. So now I'm going to go through the hierarchy, project windows and inspector. So as you can see in the hierarchy, every time I create something it will put everything into the hierarchy. So if you click on the main camera, if you hit F, you can focus on where it is. So you can see here that's the main camera and the camera preview's there, which when you go to the game, that's what you actually see, which is pretty cool. Not really, just blue. Whenever you make something, like we did before, we made the cube, it pops up into your hierarchy. So say if we want to make another object, we can go, say, what should we do? So we'll make a cylinder, like that. We'll just move this sucker out of the way. See, and as you saw it before, it just made a cylinder and it just placed it in the hierarchy. Now, when if you really want to get technical and pretty cool, which you will need to eventually later on, you can actually parent these together. The way you do that is when you can click on, say, the cylinder, you middle mouse click, left click, and then you hold down left click, and then say if we want to parent the cylinder to the cube, can see how it highlights like that, where it has a circle all the way around it. Just drop and drag on top of that, and then I can see it disappears. Have this little arrow here, drop down, and then you get the cube and the cylinder. So say if we clicked on the cube and we wanted to move it, you look at that, just move them together, parented. Some items you might want to do this, or you probably would have to do this. Some items you import into from Maya or 3D Studio Max will come parented together depending how you modeled them and such. So this gets pretty hairy, as you can imagine. You've got a full game scene and it just can get pretty full on, which I can give you an example. After these videos, can run up the example one and I can show you what it looks like, which can get pretty crazy. Next one we have is your project folder. So after this user interface section, I'll go into a bit more detail into this, but basically in project you will have your different folders. For an example, you can have like your scenes, a scene folder, which will be pretty much a game scene itself. One thing people don't realize is every level in a game is pretty much a different scene. Some people that are watching this probably will, but just for those people that don't, there will be a lot of game scenes. And you put your materials, your assets, your particles, scripts, everything will go into there, but we'll go into that one a bit more later. Your next one is your console. Whenever you have a problem or as an error or something with the script or just Unity itself, it will probably come up in here. You can clear it, collapse it, clear on play, or just error pause. Yeah, that's that. And then we can, and you can go create here as well, which is the same as previous, so it's just the same ones, but it's just for if you want to create it in the project area. Inspector's probably where you're going to spend most of your time besides the scene folder and your hierarchy. Project you will, of course, because you got to grab your items from there, but inspectors where you're going to do all the editing. So as you can see, it looks a bit crazy here. So we'll unparent these out, which you just click out in the middle of nowhere and it'll just make them separate objects. So you can see here your inspector, which is your name, which is obviously our cylinder, And you can add in all these different nodes which you like here. So your cylinder, mesh filter, which will be the actual mesh itself, which if you see these blue triangles, that's the actual mesh itself. Or when you actually model something from Maya or 3D Studio Max, that mesh that you've exported, which I'll go through later, will be in that mesh filter section. Your capsule collider, which will vary, as you can see on the box, it's got a box collider and such. That basically, if you were to play a game, if you were to walk, say, okay, let me give you an example. If, say, a box or this capsule cylinder, sorry, does not have a collider, you'll be able to walk through those objects. But because they have a collider, it'll be like hitting a brick wall, and it will not let you go through. I mean, if you could imagine trying to walk through a brick wall, you kind of can't. So that's probably the best way to explain it. Mesh renderer, which basically allows you to physically see the item or the object, sorry, or asset. And default diffuse, which diffuse is your color map, which basically is, in this case, this whitey grey color, which you can obviously make your own and make it look fancy and pretty, which I'll get into a bit more details later. And you can make different layers and you can edit them, and layouts you can change, but I'll go into that a much later date because that's a bit crazy and a bit full on. But that's the end of this tutorial. Oh, sorry, actually I should say this is your previewer for your materials. This can change, as you can see, different views, which, yeah, if you have different materials, you can actually view it here, as well as the objects there, out there, in the scene. You can choose the different, you know, if it's got shadow, shade, and all that jazz, whatever floats your boat. And yeah, that can change to animations and all that, but we'll get that into a further date. So that's all for the time being. That's part 3 for UI. Next video will be on folder in the projects, making a very clean, easy to follow workflow, which will be a different lesson. So I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully I answered all your questions and made it a bit easy user interface. It may look a bit scary at first, but it's pretty simple from there. If there's any questions, just either post comments on YouTube or just ask me personally if you are watching this and you actually know me personally. So that's part 3 for user interface, and the last part, next one will be lessons on folder structures. Thank you.